What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2018 Honda Civic Si Coupe. Huge thanks to Wayne for providing me with his very cool Civic Si to review for you guys today. So about the 2018 Civic Si Coupe, we already did the sedan last year and I was very impressed with that, but it wasn't perfect. And this coupe here, in addition to not doing a coupe yet, I also am excited to do this one because it's tuned and has a couple light modifications like the slightly wider wheels and tires you see here. And so this is going to be a nice showcase of what you can do with some minor mods to a new Civic Si to maybe address some of those concerns that I had originally with a stock vehicle. So anyway, as far as the looks on the Si goes, they're really great. I love these new gen Civics. They're all very cool looking, especially the coupes. And so one nice thing with, like, for example, the regular coupe that I did the EXT a couple of years ago, this has a little bit more aggression up front here. You see the trim that used to be chrome around the grille and headlamps is now blacked out. That's a factory thing for the SIs here. The slightly more aggressive front bumper as well. Of course, the SI badge there in the grille. Coming down to the sides, these are Enki aftermarket wheels. They're not the factory wheels, but do look really nice, especially with the Honda center cap there. They almost look OEM in a very nice look. They're wrapped in 235 wide summer tires as well. And then going out back there, I really still love the full width tail lamps you have here. You also have a spoiler, which is optional here on the Si and looks very good on this one as well. I think it's just enough and really accents the back end and that rear trunk area very nicely. And you have the center exhaust, which was exclusive to the Si's here until the 2019 model year. I think they're integrating that in the regular Civic as well. But on the 18s here, it still is exclusive to the Si. Looks very good as well. Again, just makes it really nice and sporty looking here with the coupe version. And I personally prefer the looks of the coupe over the sedan myself. But both are very good looking, and especially in this pearl white color, this one really pops with the black wheels. Whereas for the interior of the Civic Si here, what's a really cool place to be. So many things that I think the Civic Si does slightly better than some of the competition. First off is these seats, which are fantastic. Some of the most supportive seats in this segment. I mean, they just have huge bolstering right by the torso and by your thighs, and just they really hug you in nicely. They're cloth, but it's a breathable cloth. It just feels a little nicer, a little smoother, and it's just got a cool pattern on it. I like the red stitching. The Si is in there as well. It looks great, and so overall just really comfortable seats too that just have really nice support. They're all manual adjustments. There isn't any kind of lumbar or anything like that, but it's okay because it actually has a good amount of lumbar support built into it already, and so great seats. Next, the steering wheel here in the Civic Si, which is again really nicely leather wrapped, has the red stitching on it again, and you have a few buttons here on the steering wheel. Mostly on the left hand side. It's a little odd how the left has more than the right, but you'll see a little volume rocker. You'll see another little button to control stuff in the digital gauge cluster, and a few other Bluetooth phone things. So just a few buttons, nothing too cluttered, and just I love the 93 grip. It's just a nice feeling wheel and great to use. Next, there are the gauges here in the Civic Si, and I really got to commend Honda because the Civic was one of the first to have standard digital gauges, and even to this day is one of the, I think, the only ones that actually has it standard. Others now have it as an option, but they're just really cool looking gauges here in these Civics, and in the Si it's nicely spiced up with a little bit of red accenting there, and especially the full digital middle portion is really cool. I love how you can have a shift light, you can have boost gauge, which is especially nice to have here, this being turbocharged. You have a G meter, a lap timer, and then all your typical, miles per gallon and audio info and all that type of stuff. You scroll through there in that center screen, and it's nicely three-dimensional. It just looks really, like a high-quality, well-done digital gauge cluster as well. And so, outstanding gauges. Coming over to the center here, in the 2018 model year, you still do not have a volume knob. That is something they're adding for 2019 is a volume knob once again. But yeah, no volume or tune knob here. Otherwise, it's a great head unit. It has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, which is great. It doesn't have some of the higher trims of the other Civics. You can get navigation and stuff, but this does not have that. So unfortunately, you just have the basics, but that's okay. With the smartphone integration, there's no need for a nav really. And just a few menus. I like how it's laid out. It's very simple, easy to understand, easy to navigate, and so I really appreciate that about it. It's just this volume slider is just not accurate. I mean, you do have the volume buttons here on the steering wheel, so I would just stick with that. But if you have a passenger that wants to change the volume or something, this is really hit or miss still, unfortunately. So not a great thing there, but like I said, Honda has rectified it for 2019s, but for 18s here, you're still stuck with that. 17s as well, of course. But otherwise, great infotainment system. Then you have auto climate climate control here is standard in the Civic Si, which is great. Just a few buttons, and you can get more detailed into, you know, changing the fan speed and stuff by hitting this climate button and bringing up the screen. You have standard heated seats here in the Civic Si too, which is really great considering this vehicle is right around $24,000. You get a lot of car for the money, and that's always been a great feature of the SIs here. You have the great shifter here. It's a shorter little lever, but is, you know, really nice with the red stitching once again. You have metal here on the top for the shift pattern, and just a few buttons for, you know, electronic parking brake, brake hold, and a sport button. The storage space though in the Civic Si is, I think, the best out of any sedan or coupe on the market. It is that good. Off in the doors here, you'll see a nice map pocket as well as a smaller bottle holder, but you do have a little additional cutout there for a bottle, which is great. But the center is where they really just had a genius use of space here. So up top, you have a huge center cubby already that's nicely rubberized, so your stuff doesn't go flying all over the place. And there's little pass-throughs, and that's because you have this whole lower portion. It's another massive, you know, cubby here, and you'll see a USB jack and a power outlet in there. Interestingly, the Civic Si does not have an auxiliary jack at all. Either you use USB or you use Bluetooth, and those are your two options. So you have to have something that's a little more modern, I suppose. You can't use an ancient iPod with just an aux jack. But anyway, not a huge deal these days, and so great to have those hookups down there and a nice space there. And then you have the area with your two cup holders, and those are nice, large, deep cup holders. You have the center armrest. This cloth around here is pretty coarse, unfortunately. I wish that was a little softer and, you know, nicer to, you know, put your elbow on. But it's nice, it's padded at all, and, you know, better than the hard vinyl you get in some of the other competitors. Anyway, you open up this little center armrest area, and you'll see a little like coin holder area. But as you can see, there's this whole deeper portion to this center cubby here, and so you can get to some of that towards the back here, but then you can also slide these cup holders back, and then you'll see another super deep cup holder, so you can fit an enormous bottle in here and still not get in the way of your shifter, which is awesome. And then you have another USB jack in there as well, which is great to see. And so, I mean, all of these things considered, it is just unmatched in this segment. There is no coupe or sedan, I think, with more storage space. Some of the crossovers might have about as much or a little bit more, but yeah, this is just outstanding amount of space. Backseat space in the Civic Si is quite good as well. So I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I have about, you know, 2 to 3 inches of legroom to spare there. I can, you know, fit back there pretty comfortably, and, you know, it's a soft backing to the seat as well. So if you have to put your knees into the seat back, if you're a little bit on the taller side, it's still not too uncomfortable. And then you have plenty of headroom as well. You know, for a coupe, I would say, you know, obviously a sedan's going to be better, but you do have a usable amount of space back there that you could use that back seat for actual adults, you know, on a fairly regular basis. I mean, it's, you know, still a little bit of a climb getting back there. So a pretty nice back seat, but of course, if you do want a, you know, larger back seat that's a little easier to use, they do offer the Civic Si in a sedan, and that has like tons of legroom. I mean, it beats a lot of mid-size sedans, crazily enough. And so the sedan version of the Civic Si here is excellent as well if you want a little more versatility. All right, so start them go for a drive. The Civic Si here has this nice little Honda key. They're really great. They just have a nice feeling to them. It doesn't feel cheap or anything. Has a nice weight to it as well, but it's not huge. It's a very small key, which I appreciate these days. Some of the other ones getting larger unnecessarily. I think Honda's going in the right direction here with their key, so I really like this key. Of course, it's keyless access, keyless entry, push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off in the 2018 Honda Civic Si Coupe. So first thing you notice here, I think the first thing I'm noticing is the clutch is a really nice light clutch and very easy to use, but it does have a little bit of a later engagement. So trying to get it smooth can be a little tricky if you're used to, you know, a quicker engaging clutch. This one takes a little longer. Shifter is great though, nice snappy shifts, you know, pretty short shifts as well, and feels great for an OEM shifter. And Honda's always done a great job with that. Their shifters are legendary. Another thing that's pretty legendary is Honda visibility. Their visibility is really good. You know, they're always very safe cars. That's one thing they're focused on. And this, you know, you have a nice large windshield, a nice large side windows here, of course, being a coupe, and view out of the back is also pretty good for a coupe as well. The only thing I can complain about as far as visibility goes is that, you know, you do have a pretty thick A-pillar here, and so that's not great. I kind of wish they would relocate that speaker to somewhere else and maybe move the mirrors away from the A-pillar there. because it's just a little bit of a chunky space there, but not the end of the world. And it is nice. You also have that blind spot camera that Honda has here in the Civics that's mounted to the side mirror there on the passenger side. It gives you a nice view so that if you don't want to look over your shoulder, even though you still should, that will kind of have your back there with that nice camera. And cruising on a main road now. One thing you might notice is this whooshy sound. That's because this one has the PDL Motorsports Cobra cold air intake that the owner installed, and that nicely addresses one of the biggest gripes I had with this generation Civic Si, is it is a little too muted. Before you didn't have any turbo sounds or engine, there was just a little growl and that was it. There wasn't any kind of exhaust note really, unfortunately, and this kind of fixes that a little bit. You know, at least you have the excitement of the intake flutter and stuff, although I think it still could use an exhaust, and that's a very easy thing to do in the aftermarket if you want. But it does sound a lot cooler with that. But anyway, other things though, as far as, you know, just cruising on a main road here, is that it has you know, a really great amount of refinement to it. That's something they really improved with this new gen Civic, and so I mean the ride is just very smooth. The SI version also has adaptive dampers that in normal mode here really soaks up the bumps nicely, so that, I mean, it is such a nice daily driver just cruising around. Even if the roads aren't great, I mean, the Civic Si will not beat you up. It's a little more comfortable than some of the competition, especially, and so that's really nice. But then if you want to, you know, have a more aggressive suspension setup, you just hit that sport mode button and it nicely firms things up, which I'll demonstrate on a back road in a few minutes. But otherwise, you know, it's pretty quiet in here too, aside from the intake noises. You know, you don't hear too much from the outside, and so it just feels like it's almost a step above the class that it's in as far as the refinement goes, and so it's just a really nice thing to just cruise around in. But let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. We'll go ahead and put it into sport mode, and here we go. Oh man, wheel spin galore. That's hilarious. So, the Civic Si here runs the 1.5 liter tiny little turbo 4-cylinder engine that normally does 205 horsepower and 192 pound-feet of torque. But this one has a tune on it. So it's a K-tuner off-the-shelf reflash. The owner hasn't dynoed this car, but it should do about 230 wheel horsepower. So that should put it, I don't know, somewhere in the like 260 to 275 horsepower range at the crank. And then it's got about a 56 wheel torque advantage with this tune as well. So you're probably right in that neighborhood as far as torque goes at the crank as well. So I mean, it's a really, it feels a good amount of punch here. And so in sport mode, it's running 23 PSI of boost. And then if you're in the normal mode, then you go down to 19 PSI and of course have less amount of horsepower there. Yeah, and also, you know, in sport mode, like I said, it kind of firms up the dampers a little bit. Steering weight gets a little bit heavier, I think, and then throttle response also is more sensitive, and so a little more eager to respond. And that's something that the tune also has adjusted as far as, you know, throttle response and when boost comes on and all that type of stuff. But even with this stock SI, you know, it does seem a little more likely to come on with the boost a little sooner whenever you're in the sport mode versus the normal mode. And another acceleration here. There is still a little bit of rev hang though, I must say, and this engine feels a little slow to rev. It's not as fast as the old you know, motor that you had, the 2.4 liter in the old Civic Si. And although, you know, throttle response is sharper with the tune and sport mode and stuff, there still is a disconnect. It's not as responsive and as fine-tuned as I would like it to be. And that's not just because it's turbocharged either, because there's other turbo stuff. I just got out of the new Veloster turbo, and that even was more responsive, where, you know, you had less dead travel in the throttle pedal. Everything just seemed a little bit lighter, you know, the lighter flywheel and stuff, so everything just seemed a little more eager. This doesn't seem to have that same amount of lightness and eagerness to it that did. But it's just like, you wait for the boost to come on and then it's wheel spin city. So it's like, it pulls strong from like 3,000, but I'm like waiting for the power those first few 1,000 RPMs, and then it finally comes on. And so now that's something that is part of the aftermarket tune. I think the stock tune last year when I reviewed the regular Si Coupe or Si Sedan, that one, it's a little more progressive. So the progression makes it nicer as a daily driver. It's a little more predictable. This is a little more exciting as long as you don't mind waiting. Unfortunately, you can't have the best of both worlds. You can't have the extreme top end and still have bottom end unless you're dealing with something like the Civic Type R. That had a little bit of lag still, but you still had that VTEC rip in addition to the turbo. So you kind of had the best of both worlds with the Civic Type R, and that motor is really the gem. That I wish they would just put a detuned version of that into this. Unfortunately, we're doing the 1.5 instead, and that's okay. And so, you know, I do really enjoy the way these SIs drive. They're really great. For the money, it's tough to beat. You know, 24,000 or so is really fantastic. And, you know, I even mentioned this back whenever I did the sedan, where this is a very punchy feeling, and it doesn't feel like it's 100 horsepower less than the Type R. It's just the Type R, it just is a little more, all those things I'm complaining about here, where, you know, things aren't quite as sharp and things have a little more disconnect. You don't have that in the Type R. The Type R, every input and everything you do is all a little more finely tuned. I'm trying to accelerate without getting wheel spin, and it's like really hard to do. It's funny though. But yeah, so I mean, obviously the Civic Type R is over $10,000 more expensive, so it's really a huge jump to make whenever you're talking about vehicles in this segment. Most people can't just go for another 10 grand for the Civic Type R. If you can, I certainly would recommend the Type R as definitely the better choice, of course. It is the top dog. But these SIs are still great, and I do like these modifications he's made. Also, the 235 wide tires, they're Goodyear summer tires, I believe, and they also do feel pretty good. I do wish they were a little stickier though. There we go, a second gear pull, I didn't get any wheel spin. But yeah, they feel pretty good. I did push them around on an off ramp a few minutes ago, and it's still kind of, they gave up a little sooner than some of the better tires out there. That's just a tire choice, so obviously that's just what he picked for his own reasons. And you know, factory tires are okay as well. I think the Bridgestone Potenzas still not fantastic either, but nice. Thankfully, Honda does offer a summer tire option from the factory. It's only like $200 more, I think, for summer tires versus the all seasons that usually come standard here on the Civic Si. So if you do want to grip your tire, you do have that option, which is really nice that they do that instead of forcing you to get a whole new set of, you know, tires for $1,000 or whatever. This is a really nice thing that Honda offers. But you know, just dodging a pothole there, and everything feels really good as far as steering goes. That is one thing. The steering has a nice weight to it, and everything feels pretty precise as far as steering goes, so I really enjoy that. Brakes also have a good amount of feel to them. There's a little bit of dead travel before you really start, you know, getting into the meat of the pad, but they do feel like nice strong brakes that, you know, inspire confidence. But as this is a sweeping corner here, and kind of a little bit of a decreasing radius thing for a bit, and that, you know, these feel good. But another thing with the Civic Si is I love the fact that they're only like 2,900 pounds. It's like 2,889, which is outstanding for a nice, large, comfortable, you know, vehicle with all the safety equipment these days and stuff. For it to have all that and still be, you know, under 2,900 pounds is phenomenal. And again, fantastic job by Honda. But it doesn't feel like 2,900 pounds. I mean, that's only like 100 or, you know, 200 pounds heavier than a BRZ and FRS, and this feels so much heavier than a BRZ or FRS does to me. And there's even some stuff that's even a little bit heavier that feels lighter than this. So I think part of what I'm feeling is the weight distribution. So these are actually like 61.5% of the weight is up front and like 38.5 in the back. So far from that 50-50 weight distribution, which is ideal. And so I think it just feels a little nose heavy, which is bizarre because you have such a light little 1.5 liter turbo motor and it's such a light vehicle. But it just, again, it's just kind of strange, but that's just the way that it feels to me. That's what I never do any kind of you know, dedicated track testing or anything super detailed in these videos. I just tell you guys how things feel to me, and that's just, you know, the way these feel. It's an absolute blast, but it's just, I still find myself missing the old Civic Si. I keep wishing for that car's slightly lighter feeling and the high revving, better sounding engine of that car. And you know, I love the new styling here. I think that's an improvement. I love the new, nicer interior and all those types of things. But yeah, I'll be curious to see if they do some type of refresh for this, and what they might end up do to kind of enhance it a little bit. But it still is a fantastic vehicle at $24,000. I mean, like I said, the only other vehicle really in this price range that's nearly as much fun is the Veloster Turbo, and that's another one that is just as much fun as this. Like I said, it's a little smaller, lighter. You're sitting lower in the vehicle, so that has a little bit more of an edge as far as feeling like a go-kart. This doesn't feel like a go-kart, just feels like a little bit of a bigger coupe that just handles really well, drives really well, and is pretty punchy. But it doesn't have that same light, small feeling like you got in the older Civic SIs. And that's something that you would say, yeah, well, it's 2018, you can't have that anymore with all the safety stuff required these days and stuff. But that's not the case. Like I said, the Veloster Turbo does have that, and there's a few others as well. Even if you want to stick with sedans, the Elantra Sport from Hyundai also kind of has a little bit of a smaller, simpler feeling to it than these do. And this honestly even feels heavier and less athletic than the Accord. The new Accord, even though it's 500 pounds heavier or whatever, it actually feels lighter in the nose. It feels like it's more eager to turn in, more eager to dive in, just more sporty in every single way. And we're talking about a longer, larger, heavier Accord. So I'm not sure how the Civic feels a little heavier and more lethargic. I kind of wish it had that same athleticism to it that the Accord does, because Honda, a lot of their cars are very exciting and lively. Just for some reason, the Civic Si just doesn't do it for me as far as being the best in the pack. And I think that's kind of there's been so many new competitors that have popped up over the past few years, and it's just a very competitive little market. And so I think the Civic Si is still fun. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still a phenomenal vehicle, especially with this tune. I really love how it wakes this vehicle up with just, the punch you get from those higher RPMs now is a lot more extreme, and makes this feel, actually, the power plant feels very similar to what you get in like a WRX, especially some of the older WRXs where you had that turbo lag and then it came on and it smacked your head. And so this is kind of a similar feeling where it just plants you in the back of your seat once that boost kicks in. But yeah, so I really appreciate all these things about it. It does have a lot of fun, great traits to it, so don't get me wrong, it's not that I don't like the Civic Si, it's just there's others that I think do it a little bit better these days, even at the same amount of money. Now, this does have a few things, for example, like comparing it to the Veloster Turbo again, that at $24,000 does not have heated seats. This does. Some of the materials in here certainly feel better than they do in other, competitors like the Hyundais. The Honda just has such nicer plastics. Everything has a little bit of padding to it for the most part, and it just feels a little more expensive in here than it does in the Hyundai, which feels pretty cut rate in a lot of places still. And so things like that, and you also have the Honda reliability and all that type of stuff, which is pretty legendary. And so all those things I think give the Honda an edge in certain areas. It just depends on, again, what you want. It all comes down to personal preference. Like with any car buying purchase, there's certain things subjective and objective that will weigh as far as what your priorities are and what you want out of your sporty vehicle here. So the Civic Si makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. It's certainly, I love how livable it is. It's so comfortable. I love the adaptive dampers, which is another thing you don't get in the Veloster. And I love all the storage spaces, the comfort and everything is really great. And so there are so many nice things about the Civic Si here. So anyway, huge thanks once again to Wayne for providing me with his Civic Si here to review for you guys today. Let me know your thoughts on the Civic Si in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.